The Soft Serve Podcast.
Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck. Oh yeah, that's right, people. Yeah. Okay, I just ate dinner, so I feel very full and sluggish. You're not going to get high energy from me today. Hey everybody, I am Sawtooth Frank, and you are listening to the Soft Serve Podcast. On the show this week, we are going to be doing a review of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. That's right. I'm going to be talking about the Christopher Nolan movie that I saw this past weekend that the whole country and the world is buzzing about. The Odyssey. But first, before we get into that, let me tell you a little show news. Now, the show news is not that I just ate dinner, although I did just eat dinner, which is probably going to result in me constantly clearing my throat, coughing, and other disruptions. But if you're a long-time listener, you have come to expect, and dare I even say, love my disruptions, including coughing and throat clearing and getting up to pee and being angered by interruptions. And just before I started recording, I was interrupted. Luckily, I don't have to play the interruption music because I was not interrupted while recording. So, on to the show news. I did, in fact, recently purchase a brand new mixer. I got a Rodecaster Pro Duo, which is a smaller version of the mixer I have now, designed specifically for two people. So I'm going to be giving up two of the microphone inputs on my current mixer. But one of the cool things about this new mixer is I can plug a guitar directly into it. And I've been playing a lot of guitar over the last couple of years. So I might be plugging my guitar into the mixer and playing it on a future show. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not committed to that. I get oddly and weirdly embarrassed and self-conscious when I'm playing the guitar and I know people are watching me or listening to me or might be listening to me. It's like the second I hit the record button, I become stupid and I forget how to play. So, but still, the new mixer has that functionality, and I just need to set aside some time to get it set up and configured. So I'm doing the show right now on my old mixer, the Rodecaster Pro, which has served me well over the many, many years. Okay? That's the only show news I have for you, is I will be introducing a new mixer into the mix at some point. It's possible I might sound a little different or what have you, so we'll see. It probably is going to be a process of trial and error. Okay? All right, the main show topic. I said we're going to be reviewing Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, the movie. Now, if you're anything like me, you may not have been the smartest kid in high school. I certainly wasn't. I was in some advanced classes for English like later in high school, but I'm pretty sure I missed the class where the super smart kids read the book or the poem, The Odyssey. So what is the Odyssey? Because I didn't fucking know. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to confess that, like, I had heard of the Odyssey. I was aware that the Odyssey was some old book or poem or something like that. But if you asked me to tell you what it was about before I saw the film The Odyssey, I couldn't tell you. I don't roll like that. Unfortunately, I don't roll with the classics. And when I was growing up, nobody thought I was smart enough to learn about the classics. So I just read stuff like Stephen King, Robert R. McCammon, Dean Koontz, horror stuff. I was into horror. That's what I read from the time I was 11 years old into my 20s. I was obsessed with horror. So going into this film, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, I had no idea what it's about. So what is it? What's The Odyssey? Let's talk a little bit about The Odyssey. Okay? And no need to feel stupid if you don't know what it is or didn't know what it was before you saw the movie. Take pride. Take pride that you were like me, Sawtooth Frank, and that you didn't know what The Odyssey was. So the Odyssey is largely considered one of the foundational works of Western literature. It is an ancient Greek epic poem traditionally attributed to Homer and was likely composed around the 8th century BCE. So let's do the math here. 8th century BCE is about 800 years before Jesus Christ was born. So Jesus Christ was born about 2026 years ago. So let's see. Let's do the math together. I have to open my calculator here. Hold on. Let me find my calculator app on my computer. It's all the way over there on my other screen. I can't find it. Where the fuck did I put it? Oh, God. All right, so we'll just use the phone. We'll use the calculator app on my phone. Okay, we'll do this together because I can't do this in my head. So 20, I have to hit the clear button. 2026 plus 800 is 2,826. So this is a poem that they think is 2,826 years old. How fucking crazy is that? And the poem tells the story of a Greek hero named Odysseus, who is struggling to return home after he fights in the Trojan War. And the war lasted 10 years. And so old Odysseus was fighting the Trojan War, and he waited to fight the Trojan War, as I learned in the movie, for 10 years. And then when that's over, his journey home, okay, which is most of the story of the Odyssey movie, takes him another 10 years. And so he's absent from his kingdom for a total of 20 years. It's a pretty epic story. And in the poem, Odysseus, he fights all sorts of monsters and mystical things and faces all sorts of challenges as he learns some stuff about himself and humanity along the way. So let me take a sip of tea here, okay? This is a lovely green matcha tea. It is bright green, like the color of spring grass. Let me take a sip. Has a grassy flavor to it, too. Excuse me. Okay, see, you like my coughing. I know you do. That's why you listen. For the authenticity. So, let me get comfortable here in my seat. So, the story of the Odyssey addresses a lot of things about, through the journey of Odysseus, addresses a lot of things about humanity that the author, Homer, is trying to tell us. Right? So Homer is trying to tell us that the qualities of a true hero, they extend beyond battlefield success. Courage, intelligence, self-control, loyalty, resilience, and devotion to family are ultimately the most important and enduring qualities over physical strength and the glory obtained from fighting battles in war. And Odysseus, in the story of the Odyssey, succeeds because not because he's the strongest of all warriors, but because he learns how to manage himself along his journey using wit, persistence, and this unwavering commitment he has to getting back home. And I think, let me just pause for a second. I know we're 12 minutes into this, but this podcast is obviously going to contain spoilers for the Odyssey. And I want to punch myself in the face for even saying that. Because like we just calculated, the Odyssey is over 2,800 years old. So you don't get to call spoilers on it, okay? I'm going to be talking about plot details. I'm going to be talking about themes. I'm going to be talking everything about the Odyssey, including my thoughts about what it's trying to say about modern humanity. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to bury the lead. I think Christopher Nolan chose to make this movie now in 2026 because it's intended to be a message about the military-industrial complex, oligarchy, which is the rule of people by the incredibly wealthy, xenophobia, and the danger of amoral strongman leaders. I think Christopher Nolan made the Odyssey to warn us about our current political climate. And I'm going to get into specific details about that after we talk a little bit more about some of the main themes of the Odyssey. Okay, the story and the movie. So I'm going to walk through those for you right now. The main themes of the Odyssey. And I want you to be thinking about, as we're going through this, kind of running around in the back of your mind, why Christopher Nolan is making this movie now, in 2026. That question has to be answered. So, I think, and these are in no particular order, but one of the most important themes of the Odyssey is the importance of home. And I'm going to fuck up my Greek pronunciation, okay, of things, because I don't speak Greek. I don't speak any language fluently other than English. I'm sorry. But home, which in Greek I think is nostos, the importance of home. And Odysseus, who is this king who left his home called Ithaca, his main goal after he fights the Trojan War is to try to get back home. And in the Odyssey, home represents family, identity, stability, and something to belong to. And Odysseus, along his journey in the Odyssey, is repeatedly tantalized with various things that maybe a lesser person or a person of lesser character would give up instead of returning home. For example, Odysseus finds himself being offered immortality and comfort that will never end. But he eschews that. He turns away from that because he just wants to go home. And the journey for Odysseus, as physically difficult it is for him, it's a much more emotional journey. And so, a key takeaway here from the Odyssey is that home, getting back to it, maintaining it, is worth enduring the most enormous hardships to hold on to or reclaim if you lose it. And Odysseus and the Odyssey also stress that endurance and persistence are one of the most important and one of the greatest heroic virtues. So in the Odyssey, in the story, to get back home, Odysseus faces the most seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Okay, he faces storms, monsters like a giant cyclops, temptations from a witch, imprisonment, and even betrayal. And Odysseus, at any point along his journey in experiencing all of these things, could have just given in, but he persisted through his strength, and he's able to make it home. Now, sort of the other side of that coin is waiting for Odysseus back in Ithaca is his wife, Penelope. And she also, in the story, demonstrates tremendous endurance by waiting the 20 years for Odysseus, while resisting all of these suitors from the kingdom of Ithaca who want to replace Odysseus. So they're lining up to get a piece of Penelope because everybody thinks Odysseus is dead. Now, Odysseus' son, Telemachus, Telemachus, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm just going to say Telemachus. He also demonstrates perseverance and endurance because he never gives up on the idea that his father, Odysseus, might still be alive out there somewhere. And through his endurance and perseverance, he matures from a young man who's coming of age into a man. And let's see. The Odyssey and Odysseus and the other characters, the story values intelligence over strength. And I point that out sort of specifically in juxtaposition to our current political climate. And Odysseus as a king and a leader is very famous, more for his cleverness than his brute force as a general and as a king or whatever he is. I think is he? No, he's not a king. That's another guy in the story, but he's like a top commander or a general or something. He's high up there. But anyways, he's well known for being very smart and clever. So, in the Odyssey, Odysseus demonstrates this by he outsmarts a gigantic cyclops whose name is Polyphemus by fooling the cyclops by riding underneath some sheep. So like the cyclops has this flock of sheep that he keeps in a cave, and Odysseus and his men get trapped in this cave, and Polyphemus the cyclops counts all of the sheep as they go in and out of the cave. And so the first time they try to escape, or the first couple times they try to escape, Polyphemus, he realizes that he counts the men and realizes they're not sheep, and he kills some of them and eats them. Now, Odysseus solves this problem by having himself and some of his men hang on upside down underneath the sheep as they go out of the cave. So he fools this cyclops, and he also solves the problem later in the story of defeating the dozens of suitors who are trying to get at his wife, Penelope, by tricking them rather than just attacking them with brute force. And so over the course of the story of the Odyssey, we see that intelligence is a greater weapon than brute force. And again, I encourage you to be thinking about that in juxtaposition to our current political climate here in the United States. Now, this one coming up also, I put in that category as relating to our current climate politically here in the United States, and why I think Christopher Nolan decided to make this movie now. It's the idea that treating guests with respect is a reflection of your moral character. Something we call hospitality, right? Or as the Greeks call it, xenia. And xenia, or hospitality, is one of the most important values in ancient Greek culture. So what does good hospitality look like in the Odyssey, right, and beyond? What does good hospitality look like now? Welcoming strangers, feeding guests, offering gifts to people, respecting the hosts when you are a guest, right? That's good hospitality. And what does bad hospitality look like in the context of the Odyssey? And you can apply these certainly, to modern society. The suitors, when they're in Odysseus's home, they abuse his home. They spill his wine. They eat obscene amounts of food. In the cave with the Cyclops, Polyphemus eats his guests. Literally. That's not good hospitality. And all throughout the Odyssey, we have various hosts violating sort of sacred customs. And we see reflected in the Odyssey over and over again that it was believed that the god Zeus thought it was important to protect travelers and guests. So this was, a godly commandment. And again, I don't have to tell you, in today's modern political climate here in the United States, there are people who revel in bad hospitality, delight in it, get their fucking jollies in treating guests in our country badly, abusing them, even killing them. And if we're to think about what the Odyssey says about that, it would say that that is a sign of poor moral character. Right? Now, you can agree with me, which you should, or you can disagree with me, in which case, go fuck yourself. Okay? And that gets us to our next key takeaway from the Odyssey, which is about pride, and specifically that pride can undo even the greatest of our accomplishments. And this is something that we see in Odysseus as a leader. Pride is his greatest flaw, having too much of it. And this shows itself, by a number of ways. In the Odyssey, after Odysseus escapes from the Cyclops, he sort of loudly and boldly boasts his real name. And this turns out to be a mistake, because the Cyclops, Polyphemus, once he gets Odysseus's real name, Polyphemus is able to pray to Poseidon to get revenge on Odysseus. And this ends up being a bad deal for Odysseus, because he suffers for many, many more years after that as a result of the Cyclops praying to Poseidon. And all throughout the Odyssey, a bunch of other characters, right? They suffer because of their pride and their arrogance. And again, I'm being fairly non-specific about how I'm drawing parallels to the current political climate in the United States, but can you think of anybody who is in a leadership role in the United States of America who's suffering from the flaw of excessive pride? I sure as fuck can. Okay, so another important concept in the Odyssey, right, is that of fate versus free will. So in the Odyssey, we have a situation where the gods, they are influencing events constantly, right? So they are involved sort of in everyday life. Athena, who is a god, she ends up supporting Odysseus. And then we have the god Poseidon, who is against Odysseus. Then we have Zeus, okay, whose job it is to sort of maintain overall order. And despite all of this, right, despite all of this umbrella of divine influence, we see that free will still matters, right? Human choices that the characters make still matter. And many of the disasters that befall Odysseus and his crew result from their poor decisions, their free will. So what are we to think about this? How do we think about it? I think what the Odyssey is trying to tell us, that fate, it may set the stage for us, but our personal choices shape our outcomes. Now, I'm not sitting here as I encourage you to think about how this particular theme applies to modern society and what's happening in the United States politics right now. I'm not personally claiming that God influences daily events. But let's just take that, let's say if that was the case. I think most at least Judeo-Christian religions still believe that even though there's a God who sort of oversees everything, that our personal choices matter. Our free will matters. And it's important to make good moral decisions. And I think the story of the Odyssey is trying to tell us that. And I think 2,800 years ago, right? I don't know if this would have been an earth-shattering thing for Homer, the guy who wrote the Odyssey, to be saying. I'm not a classics person. I don't know anything about the classics, really, but or if that was a radical idea, the idea of free will mattering in sort of a larger landscape of godly influence. But what I can tell you right now, for all of us today, living here in the United States of America, our choices matter. What we do impacts us. Okay? All right, hold on one second. I think I'm being interrupted. I will be right back. Okay, that was a false alarm. It wasn't a real interruption. It was my my son Ted coming home from work and getting himself set up. But I will play, or I will have played the interruption music here, because I'm not editing this, and I'm not cutting out that pause. I'm sorry. If you don't like it, fuck off. Okay. All right, that brings us to another theme of the Odyssey, which is that of loyalty and faithfulness, where we see loyalty being rewarded and betrayal bringing consequences. Now, examples of loyalty in the Odyssey are Odysseus's wife Penelope remaining faithful to him despite intense pressure from the suitors, right, to remarry. But she doesn't give in. And remember, she's been alone for 20 years. And I'm sure girlfriend's got an itch that she needs to scratch. But still, she doesn't scratch it with another man. She scratches that itch on her own, I think. We also see that Odysseus's son, Telemachus, remains loyal to his father. He never gives up. He says, my father's still alive. My dad's going to come home, and all you motherfuckers are going to be sorry. You lustful, conniving suitors who are macking on my mom and trying to get in the seat next to her. You're all going to pay when he comes home. And they laugh at him and they ridicule Telemachus. But he's like, you know what? I have so much faith that my father's alive. I'm going to go off on a dangerous mission to go talk to the king's brother about what happened at the Battle of Troy, where my father was last seen. So he does that, and it's really his loyalty and his faithfulness that propels him. Let's see, another example of loyalty and faithfulness in the Odyssey, right, are the pig farmer who's a friend of Odysseus's. His name is Eumaeus. He stays loyal to Odysseus. And he takes care of fucking Odysseus's dog, Argos. Now let's talk about this fucking dog. The dog stays loyal too. Odysseus's dog, Argos, never gives up hope that Odysseus is going to return home. And when Odysseus does, the dog is 20 years old. The dog sees Odysseus, wags its tail, and it dies. It never stopped waiting for Odysseus. It was loyal and faithful. Now again, there are plenty of disloyal fuckers in the Odyssey too. There are those suitors we talked about, the ones who are trying to get with Penelope. There are a bunch of disloyal maidservants who end up betraying Penelope. And some of Odysseus's crew members along his journey home, they're disloyal too. And the disloyal people get punished, usually in a very horrific way. They either, usually getting eaten by a monster or something, or getting killed. And loyalty and faithfulness, right? How does this map to our current political climate? Well, I think we see certain leaders in the United States right now, certain top elected officials, who are not loyal or faithful to anyone, right? The relationships are purely transactional. So the second that you're no longer useful to that person or those people, they turn on you and they attack you on social media and call you a very stupid person, not very smart, right? So loyalty and faithfulness, okay? Let's see, another theme of the Odyssey is that if you're going to be going after long-term goals, right, you have to resist the temptation of short-term pleasures, right? So, and Odysseus, along his journey home, he encounters many, many temptations and offers of short-term pleasures, right? He encounters a witch named Circe. We talked about her before, this woman who offers him immortality. Her name is Calypso. So he can live with her forever if he wants to, but he doesn't want to. And then the sirens of the ocean, right? And Odysseus, he listens to the song of the siren. And he has so much loyalty and faithfulness that even he is able to resist the temptation of the sirens. Now, of course, he's tied to a post to the ship's mast, but still, sort of the important takeaway here is that sometimes doing the thing that feels good in the moment doesn't serve us in the long run. Okay? So be thinking about that. And again, I think in our current U.S. political climate, we see lots of impulsiveness from our political leaders to sort of indulge in the short-term pleasures, right? That certain political activities bring, but the long-term goals are harder to achieve. Justice and revenge, another critical theme of the Odyssey and Odysseus's journey. Right, so the end of the Odyssey really focuses on the idea of justice. Right, so, when Odysseus makes it back home, the suitors have stolen his money, right? They've disrespected his family. They have violated his home and the sacred rules of hospitality. And the revenge that Odysseus exacts upon these people, right, is to restore social order. Now, so I don't know where I'm going with that, but just that justice is important, right? And revenge is not so important. So stay with me here. I think mapping this to our current U.S. political climate, I think we see revenge as a key value and key objective of the current administration that's running our U.S. government, right? They're all about revenge, retribution, and they have upended justice, right? They have taken over the Department of Justice and the justice system to enact that revenge. And I think we've lost our way. And I think the people running our government need to go read the fucking Odyssey or see Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. God damn it. All right, so the last theme we see reflected in the Odyssey is identity in disguise. Now, Odysseus, he spends most of the story in disguise, right? Because he knows if he shows up anywhere, he's going to be recognized. And he hides himself as a beggar. And he is judged throughout the Odyssey because he's disguised, not by his appearance as Odysseus, but by his actions, his character, his loyalties, right? And this goes for the other characters in the Odyssey as well. And the Odyssey tries to tell us that a person's true identity really is revealed through their behavior, not their outward looks. And if we map that, again, to what's happening in our current U.S. political climate, what this current group of people leading the federal government believe is that your actions don't matter. It's all about how you look. Whether you have your face spray painted orange and your fucking hair helmet aqua netted tightly to your fucking scalp. Or you have that piece of shit running the Department of Defense who loves to fat shame our soldiers, right? And is obsessed with alpha males and appearing strong, right? These people, they care more about outward looks than they do about how their behavior reveals their true identities. So something to think about. Now, I've tried to tie for you some or most of the major themes of the Odyssey to current U.S. political events. And I hope that was helpful in sort of thinking about how we can take a almost 3,000-year-old story and understand how it could possibly be relevant to today. And like I started out saying here, I believe that Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is trying to tell us something about the modern political climate and modern events. And again, I think it's trying to say something. It's a message about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. And in case you didn't know, I end this podcast, every episode, with a speech also warning about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. It's why I encourage everyone to actually listen to those words at the end. And if you haven't already, please hang on and just listen to the outro music and the speech. That was given by Dwight D. Eisenhower on his way out of the presidency. So, I believe that Nolan's film is a message about the dangers of the military-industrial complex, oligarchy, which is the rule of people by the wealthy, xenophobia, which is fear of strangers, and warning us about amoral strongman leaders. So let's talk a little bit about each one of these. But first, I want to take my shirt off because it's getting hot in here. Hold on. Here we go. I am taking off my headphones. I am now removing my shirt. Here we go. I'm coughing. All right, I took off a layer. Now I'm going to place my headphones back on. Here we go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how Christopher Nolan is talking about each one of these areas, okay? All right, let's start with the military-industrial complex. Right, so the Odyssey begins after the 10-year Trojan War. And it's not focused on the battlefield glory of the war, but on its aftermath, right? And sort of the realization that Odysseus makes that he acted during the war in a very bad way, and realized that the senseless and brutal sacking and pillaging of Troy cost many people, including himself, potentially their humanity. And Odysseus spends, another 10 years after the fall of Troy trying to get home because of war's consequences. And in today even, right, we see that many service members and many veterans never make it home. Just today, as I'm recording this, it has been confirmed that another 3 people have been killed in Iran. Those people will never make it home. right? And those veterans who do return from war are psychologically and emotionally changed forever. I've ranted about this over the 6 or 7 years we've been doing this podcast. Is that we're really good at sending people off to war, but we're fucking shitty in how we treat our veterans who come home. There's a reason that veterans have an incredibly high suicide rate, especially those who are returning from war. And, you know, the Odyssey, the movie, the poem, it is saying something to us about the dangers of sending people off to fight in never-ending wars. And rather than celebrating conquest, right? The story of the Odyssey and Christopher Nolan's movie emphasizes the human cost of prolonged conflicts. And I don't think it's overstating it to say Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey is encouraging us to draw parallels between ancient wars, modern military interventions, and asking the question whether wars can create lasting security, or do they simply perpetuate suffering of human beings? And, you know, for me, you know, I've only been alive and on this planet for 52 years. But it's kind of startling to realize that a almost 3,000-year-old book is grappling with some of these same themes and problems that plague modern society. And I think it says something about us, about as human beings. You know, in our narrow little windows of time that we're alive, we want to believe that we can change, that our better angels are not defeated by our better devils, but I'm not so sure. Okay, so I also think, we talked about this, I think Christopher Nolan's movie is saying something about, sorry, I'm moving around because my back hurts and it's making noise. I think Christopher Nolan's movie, The Odyssey, is also saying something about oligarchy, right? The rule of the rich and the abuse of power. Right? So during Odysseus's absence from Ithaca, a small group of very wealthy aristocratic suitors control his household. Oligarchs! They consume his resources without accountability and assume that their status as suitors entitle them to power and to consume resources. They manipulate the social norms, right? Such as the value of hospitality for their own personal gain, while ordinary servants and citizens have very little influence. Sound fucking familiar? It sounds like our current political climate. The rule of fucking billionaires over the rest of us who are just the goddamn motherfucking servants in the house, in the palace. So, I think Christopher Nolan wants us to see the suitors as symbolizing the billionaire elites who are exploiting our government institutions for private benefit, rather than serving the common good. You tell me, in what fucking world does it make sense that a goddamn president of the United States makes $4.2 billion in a year. Fucking answer me. It makes no sense. Oligarchy. Abuse of power. We're seeing it now. Right fucking now. I mean, this one's fucking obvious, isn't it? I believe Christopher Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey is a warning about xenophobia and losing the sacred value of hospitality. Right? We talked about this. One of the Odyssey's central moral principles is that of xenia, the sacred obligation to welcome and care for strangers. And the characters in the Odyssey are repeatedly judged by how they treat outsiders. The good hosts, they receive divine favor, while those who abuse or mistreat strangers face severe consequences. And this modern adaptation, I think, emphasizes that the fear of outsiders leads to moral failure, while compassion and hospitality strengthen society. I don't have to tell you. Just look around. Look around at what this country is doing to our guests. Look what ICE is doing to people who are in our country. Citizens alike, non-citizens, abusing and killing them, gunning them down in the street, throwing them in camps, in prisons, deporting people to countries that are not of their origin. Need I go on? And yeah, I think Christopher Nolan made an adaptation of the Odyssey to say something about what we're doing now in the United States of America. How we have lost our way from the sacred value of xenia. The sacred fucking obligation to welcome and care for strangers. Okay, and obviously, I think Christopher Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey is saying something about leadership and moral responsibility. Odysseus' one of his greatest virtues and one of his greatest victories comes through restraint, intelligence, and the application of diplomacy rather than brute force. His greatest failures stem from pride and impulsive decisions. Nolan is trying to tell us, in my opinion, that wise leadership requires humility and accountability rather than domination. Domination, brute force. Sound like anyone you fucking know? Sound like a president of the United States that you might fucking know? Yeah. So, I believe that Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is a modern warning to us all that war leaves deep scars long after battles end. That concentrated, unaccountable power can corrupt communities and countries. Societies are judged by how they treat strangers and the vulnerable. Pride and the pursuit of power often prolong conflict. And the ultimate goal for any civilization should not be victory in war, but restoring peace, home, and human relationships. You're welcome. Now, I don't know where else you're going to hear a fucking hour-long breakdown of what Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is trying to tell us about modern society. But you heard it here. We're at 1 hour! That's what we're at. 1 hour and 1 minute. I'm getting tired. I'm getting grouchy. I'm getting irritable. My back hurts, but I'm going to keep going for you. And that's as fast as I could fucking go through it all. And if you don't like it, okay, fine. Don't listen. No, I take that back. There's barely any of you listening anymore. So please, don't stop listening. I love you. I love you so much. I love you so much, baby. Don't stop listening to my podcast, please. I need your downloads. I need you to have me in your ears. Okay. Shall we move on? All right, let's talk about a movie I've seen recently called The Odyssey. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about what I think The Odyssey is trying to say about modern society. Are you still there? Did you leave? Did you say to yourself, I can't sit through another fucking hour of that? Okay, that's fine. We won't talk about The Odyssey anymore. But I did see The Odyssey. And I'm scheduled to see Spider-Man in less than 2 weeks. I'm excited about that. So I'll go see Spider-Man. Because we all know a spider can. And a sawtooth can see the Spider-Man. Okay? So I'm going to go see that in 2 weeks. TV. What am I watching on TV? Let's see. A couple shows. I just concluded Beef Season 2. Love that show. I thought Season 1 was really great, but Season 2 was very, very different and great in sort of its own unique way. I highly recommend Beef Season 2. And it's made by a Korean TV and filmmaker. I don't know his name, but so there's a lot of stuff about Korea in there. And as somebody who lived in South Korea for a year, I kind of dug some of it from that perspective. Obviously continuing to watch House of the Dragon. Love that show. It's the prequel to the Game of Thrones. I think we just finished season 5 of House of the Dragon. So that's going good. Watching this documentary called The Man Will Burn, about Burning Man, which is this festival that gets put on in the desert every year over Labor Day weekend. And it's like this gigantic art festival out in the middle of the desert. And I think after watching 2 episodes of The Burning Man, I want to go. So Stomping Jen and I are beginning to talk about...
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
When exactly we are going to go. Right? We're obviously not going to be able to go in 2026. I don't think we'll be able to go in 2027. Our daughter, Space Unicorn, wants to go. So maybe we'll go after she graduates from high school in 2028. We'll see. But part of me kind of like wants to go without her first to kind of see what it's like to go. But if anybody listening to this has ever been to Burning Man, I would fucking love to hear about it. I would actually love to talk to you about it on the podcast. So let me know if you'd be willing to come on the podcast and talk to me about Burning Man. Okay? But anyways, we're watching The Man Will Burn on HBO. Music. I am listening, as of late, to a shit ton of Cypress Hill. Insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain. Insane in the membrane. Insane, got no brain. What the dow? What the bumper? Na 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 dow. Got the bumper na bow. What the dow? That's me scatting some Cypress Hill. Yeah, they're a rap group from the 90s. They rap about weed, killing people, gangsta shit. Anyways, it was one of the most fun concerts I've ever been to. It was a lot of fun. I saw it at Tree House Brewing in Deerfield, Massachusetts. And the best part of the whole show is it was over by 10:15. I was walking to my car by 10:30. Perfect. But seriously, I have a whole new respect for Cypress Hill as a band after seeing them live. So I've been kind of going back through and listening to their music and going through their catalog and listening to their old albums. I really like them. Be Real, who's the main rapper guy, is an amazing MC. Like, he rides the beat like nobody I've ever heard. I might even put him right under Eminem in terms of his lyrical execution, not necessarily words, but his execution and how he rides the beat when he raps. The guy is so fucking fluid. He's like a rubber band. I love it. So I am, if you see me out there walking around with headphones on, I'm probably either listening to a podcast or listening to Cypress Hill. Inside of the brain! Got no brain! So you wanna be a rock superstar? Drop out. Okay. I think we've come to the end of the show. I do not have a co-host here any longer to encourage me to wrap it up, so I'm going to wrap it up. Okay? You can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Substack, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're also on YouTube, and find us, subscribe, download, click like, do all that shit, okay? Look, I'm not exaggerating. I lost 2/3 of my audience when I took a 2-year break. So if you're listening to this, you are in a rarefied group. There's very few of you left. And, it's going to take a while. It took a while to build it up to where it was. It's going to take a while to build it back. And I honestly don't care if we never get back to where we were. But where I'm going with this is I occasionally hear from some of you. If you're listening to this, send me some feedback. You can shoot me an email, softservepodcast@gmail.com. You could send me a direct message through any of those platforms we were talking about before. Okay. My website, softservepodcast.com. It has a contact form you can fill out. Right now, only bots trying to sell me an increased social media presence fill out my form. So I would love it if an actual human being did. Okay. I think that's it. So yeah, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Don't know if I'm going to do another movie review. I don't know what I'm going to do, honestly. I say this to you from show to show. I don't plan it out anymore. I'm beginning to feel like maybe I just want to get on and shoot the shit with somebody. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know. I have a friend of mine who reached out he wants to do an episode on death. Although I haven't heard from him in a while, so I don't know if we're ever going to actually do it. But I'm getting like more and more interested now in thinking about different things to do with this. So if you want to come on and just fucking shoot the shit with me for a while, let's do it. Okay? All right, folks. Well, that leads me to the place where we end up at the end of every show, where I have to say goodbye to you now. Okay? So I'm going to do it, then I'm going to play the outro music, and at the end of that will be the disclaimer. Okay? Every episode needs a disclaimer. So, thanks for listening. I appreciate each and every fucking one of you. And we'll see you next time. So, yeah. Bye now.
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.
Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy.